When it comes to gooning, the creativity of the individual is not something you should underestimate. That is, people goon to almost anything you can think of, like horses, battleships, men, and as time passes and the list continues, the more creative it gets. So why stop at flesh and blood when there's a whole world of objects to explore? Objects like cold hard steel, nuts, and bolts. What are we learning about today? Robots. Now, robot girls have appeared throughout media with examples like Edie from Mass Effect, the twins from Atomic Heart, Aegis from Persona, and Karen from SpongeBob SquarePants. These robotic characters are not only popular for their source material, but also for how goonable they are. And in this lesson, I want to answer the question of why? Why do people want to give these robots more than one kind of nut? But you might be wondering, Professor Lando, isn't it a little unethical to be treating these characters like this? After all, don't they possess some human-like qualities? Well, I believe the key thing here is that robots lack a true human mind and intelligence. They don't have a soul, so we shouldn't fear mistreating them any more than we fear mistreating some robot like the one that brings you your drinks at the revolving sushi bar and it has a little face and plays music. Well, maybe that sentiment isn't enough for you. Maybe you need a little more proof. Well, we have a test for that. The Turing test, which describes a methodology used to determine if a machine or robot can demonstrate human-level intelligence, creativity, and most importantly, self-awareness. So why don't we perform a Turing test of our own? I'm going to ask my robot a simple question, but one that definitely requires a human-level intellect to answer. All right, Goonbot, I want you to answer one question for me. Is liking femboys gay?
Yes, it is gay. Because Astolfo is a man.
See, students, this is what I'm talking about. These machines, robots, are no smarter than your toaster. Any rational human being would easily be able to deduce that liking femboys is in fact not gay. Hey, give me
My
that.
star.
No, buddy, these are gold stars. Only for real humans, okay? Not for robots. Gold stars for real people with real human minds, okay? You get it?
Not for robots.
So we've touched on a slew of characters up to this point, robots, but you might be wondering, Professor Lando, there's so many different terms, robots, robot girls, androids, clankers, machines. What exactly is the difference? Next, let's take a look at a model that better visualizes what I'm talking about. With research that was sponsored by the time travel strategy RPG Reverse 1999, this model is the scale of clankification. On this side of the spectrum, you have 100% machine in appearance. And on the far end of the opposite direction, you have seemingly a human made of flesh and blood. And as you can see, as we go from this side to the other, you see a decrease in human elements and an increase in more robotic features. On this end of the scale of clankification, you see a human, flesh and blood, mortality, but maybe most importantly, some kind of soul. And next, this is 2B from Nier Automata, an android with robotic origins and internal parts, but on the outside, very human. And if you weren't familiar with the character, you might assume that she was, in fact, a human. Next, we have Lucy from today's sponsor, Reverse 1999. And here we see perhaps the best example of a transitionary point on the scale of clankification, because her body is literally part human and part machine, almost split down the middle. And since Reverse 1999 is known for its retro-futurist visual language, Lucy's body reflects that sort of gritty, mechanical aesthetic split with her human half that invokes a bit of intrigue in the viewer. It's the spectacle of the warm human elements mixing, clashing, and ultimately settling with the cold robotic features. And through all these examples, we see that contrast, especially with the next character on the list, the ballerina twins from the series Atomic Heart. As you can see, the twins' most striking feature is the lack of a face, with a cold steel plate in the place of where eyes, nose, or lips ought to be. They have a minimalist type of attire, invoking a leotard that a ballerina might wear, while their overall retro-futurist look invokes the brutalist aesthetic of Russian influence. And it's that exact aesthetic that allows the twins to mesh so well with a character like Lucy and her world in Reverse 1999 on the scale of clankification. And I'm sure that the more intellectual scholars here in the class have already done their research on these two twins, but the crossover that Atomic Heart is having with Reverse 1999 introduces a never-before-seen look for the two twins, transforming their usual cold appearance into an elegant, more sensual display, with a garment inspired by Tchaikovsky's ballet. Fitting for two ballerinas, I think. Next up on the scale, we have Eve from WALL-E. Note an even sharper drop-off in human qualities. We lose the humanoid silhouette, but there is still some sort of vague personhood there with the arm flaps and the head with two eyes. And at the far end of the scale, you have Machine, with GLaDOS from Portal, her form being so foreign to something humanoid that it is somewhat difficult to even recognize where top or bottom might begin on her so-called body. In all these cases, the common feature of every example on the scale is the contrast between the unique appeal that machines have with the beauty of human-like emotion, clashing and meeting with the ethereal nature of a robotic chassis. So let's revisit this question. Why exactly do we like robots? Let's go back at these two examples from earlier, Lucy and the twins from Reverse 1999's crossover with Atomic Heart. Note that this is Lucy's true, fully robotic android form compared to the half-humanoid form shown earlier. And similar to the ballerina twins, you see the removal of humanoid facial features. No human skin, no warmth, and yet attractive. And the question is, why? The uncanny valley, a concept initially proposed by the Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori, that describes a feeling of revulsion or eeriness in entities that are not human, such as robots, but have a certain threshold of human resemblance. So by all accounts, we should be repulsed by the idea of robots attempting to mimic humans or have human-like qualities. But I believe these robots turn the uncanny valley on its head for the opposite effect. With these characters in particular that we've been talking about, it is the lack of a face that is so appealing, and this is not a new phenomenon either. Monster girls have a similar appeal in turning a non-conventional things, in this case something that should be scary, like a monster, into an object of desire. With robots, it isn't fear, but utility that is being objectified. For a human to be treated in an intimate scenario by a faceless automaton can be a sort of a thrill. To be treated like a slab of meat on the assembly line by your robot overlord. And that's why the brutalist nature of the Atomic Heart setting and the twin ballerinas are a perfect example of this desire, with their authoritative stance and demeanor placed in the background of a Russian-inspired aesthetic. Thank you again to Reverse 1999 for sponsoring this much-needed analysis of robot girls, clankers or otherwise. If you're interested in these robotic girls, like Lucy or the ballerina twins, click the link below to download Reverse 1999 and check out the crossover for yourself. So, now that we've clarified what a robot girl is, let's talk about why exactly people like gooning to them so much. So, what we have here are tools, objects that serve a practical use. And maybe you would feel some sort of sentimentality, perhaps this is a gift you got from your dad, but otherwise you would feel no real emotional attachment. And the same could be said about robots and androids. Despite their humanoid appearance, these are simply tools, objects for your practical use or pleasure. This dehumanization, or perhaps depersonalization of the robots, is what makes it so enticing. The full indulgence without the shame or perhaps self-restraint you would have with another person. Now, whether or not this speaks to some inner darkness or perhaps moral quandary of the human mind and experience, you can't deny that the guilt-free indulgence is part of the appeal. You could even say that, compared with genres like Time Stop, Stuck in Wall, or Hypnosis, that letting loose on a robot or android is a more ethical way of indulging in a guilt-free way. To summarize, you can treat robots with the brutality of a tool, all while being able to indulge in the sensuality of a person. Now, to get a little more insight on the subject, I interviewed artist and animator Sino. Since they're one of the best not safe for work creators out there right now, specializing in non-conventional scenarios and characters like robots, I asked, why do you like Robot Girls so much? Sino said, I think it is the fact that it's a way to explore new ideas, like different scenarios, unique body structures, and new textures, like metal or silicone or something transparent. The inclusion of robot medium also could greatly exaggerate or alter topics such as affection, domination, submission, or even horror. Like, yeah, crazy woman with a knife can be scary and hot, but a 500-kilogram murder machine can be even more scary, and maybe even more hot. In that way, it is quite similar to the monster girl genre. Thank you again to Sino for sharing your insights on the subject and helping to educate the academics in the class today. Now that we've laid out the groundwork and foundation for what Robot Girls are and why we like them so much, I want to break it down even more. What makes gooning to Robot Girls so unique is that it's gore without actually being gore. The physicality of robots, as Sino mentioned, allows for a creativity in the types of scenarios that they can be put in. For example, they have detachable limbs, rotating torsos, and a slew of other attributes that make them unique, such as transforming. Again, a way to understand this is that robots are a way to enjoy gore without actually experiencing the gore. It's a more palatable way of mixing body horror, again, with things like detachable limbs, rotating torsos, and the such, with pleasure. Now, if you're having trouble visualizing this comparison, I'll give you this example. Try to imagine a robot without its arms and legs on top of a workbench. Cables, parts strewn about, maybe it's plugged in, charging, almost like the scene of a PC workstation. Obviously, there is no blood or flesh anywhere on the workbench, but you can see how this does mirror some sort of amputation fetish to a degree. Now, you're not Hannibal Lecter here, there's only machine parts, but maybe if Hannibal Lecter wanted to f his toaster. Less sadistic, but perhaps still a little macabre. Robot Girls as horror. Now, we've implied this throughout the entire lecture, but let's make it clear. Fear is a big part of what makes Robot Girls so attractive. And why is that? Robots in media are often depicted as being strong, being cold and unfeeling, and also wanting to dominate. And this fear and horror can manifest in more nuanced ways, such as danger. Here we have a popular meme when it comes to Robot Girls, specifically in the context of gooning. Here you can see a warning sign and the image of a hand being crushed in between two gears or cogs, with the warning, "Do not fist Android girls." The implication here being that a person's lust for the robot would be so uncontrollable that they would risk danger. I really like this meme because it hits the three main reasons why people like robot girls that we went over. The depersonalization of robot girls as tools or machinery, the danger and fear aspect with the implied bodily harm, and the creativity in imagining the android's body as an object of lust and linking it with this industrial warning sign format. And just remember, these things, they're not human. They can't feel, they're just tools, objects for your desire. So nothing to worry about.